Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Religion of Human Nature podcast. Today's topic is staying positive, a topic that I think is incredibly important today with what's going on in the world, but it's always important, especially as we look at each other and how do we improve ourselves and allow others to improve around us. I have two really interesting guests who did not know each other before this and work in totally different fields. So I'm going to first introduce Carly Rothenberg. Carly is an actress extraordinaire. Carly, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much for having me.
Good. My pleasure. And the second is Alan Stein. It says junior, so I'm assuming there's another Alan Stein, who is an author and a motivational speaker and apparently good friends with Kevin Durant, if you can see in the background. Alan, how are you doing?
I'm fantastic. And you are right about the junior. If you ever meet my dad, he'll tell you he's the original and I'm the copy. He'll tell you that. That's always his opening joke.
It's a good joke, and he can use it forever. So today, again, we're speaking about staying positive. And Carly, I want to direct the first question to you. So staying positive, you're sort of in the Hollywood world. I don't want to say, I don't know specifically if you're on a break. You do some voiceover work, so maybe you are working in some realms. Maybe that is the work, but I know that Hollywood is pretty much shut down. So how are people staying positive, staying productive in a time in which there's no foreseeable future that we know for sure?
I think for me in particular, I think my journey was to stay connected to the voiceover community through Facebook and through Instagram, and just connecting with my colleagues online was a big part of it. I had to very quickly put the voiceover booth into place at home because I was one of those voice actors who didn't have the home setup. I had the microphone at my desk and I had sort of soundproofing around me, but it wasn't quite sufficient. So there was a whole process with that, and I had to sort of laugh my way through that because there was so many technical issues that I had to learn very quickly, and I just called on massive amounts of people and support in order to get that done. And then the other cool part is that I teach at a performing arts college, and I had to stay positive in order to pass on information to my students and be a positive influence on them, because they're coming into this industry in a completely different way. They're coming into an industry that is at a dead stop. So they don't know how or when they'll get an agent, or how or when they'll be seen by industry folk in their industry event or anything like that. So it was important to stay connected and positive for them. Kind of like a mom being positive for their child when they send them off to first grade, it's sort of the same thing. You just have to, you stay positive, that you just do, you have to. And I got that from my family. I think my mother always saw things through rose-colored glasses anyway. So
It's a perfect example. I remember that when I dropped my daughter off at preschool, and the first one, and she was just crying, and I was also crying. And I was like, but I got to trust that it's going to be okay, that at the other end, something's going to, beautiful is going to come of this. Alan, as a motivational, you can write, certainly you can continue writing, but I imagine the motivational speaking, at least in public or in person, has halted. How are you staying positive?
Yeah, well, very similar to Carly. I've had to make some pivots and some adjustments. I have not been on a stage in close to 12 weeks, and more than likely won't be on one for another 2 to 3 months. So I've had to shift gears and try to be of service to others virtually, doing, calls and virtual events and things like this. But one of the positive threads of this, it just reminded me that speaking is what I do. It's not who I am. My job is to empower others and fill other people's buckets. And while my primary platform was being on stage at in-person events, once that was removed, I had to find another way to still do what it is that gets me up in the morning and gets me excited. So, from a positivity standpoint, being positive may not always improve your circumstances, but being negative never will. So if it's ever going to be a choice, I'm going to choose to look for the positive, look for the silver linings. I would say that I'm wired to my core as a rather optimistic and positive person in general. So it may come a little easier to me than maybe some others. But I'm a big believer that if you look hard enough for the good, you'll find it, no matter how bleak things are. And I think we can all admit, at least at the time of this recording, you know, between the civil unrest and the COVID-19, it's a pretty bleak world right now, but I don't let that deter my positivity and my outlook and perspective.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you've written 2 books, I believe, and you've got Raising Your Game as the one behind your head, I believe, right?
That's the one.
So tell us a little bit about that. And I imagine, I've not read the book. I'm admitting that publicly. I haven't had much delivered to my home in the last, but it is in my queue now for Amazon. So what is it that the book says about staying positive? Because I imagine to raise your game, that is a huge component.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you've got to keep your eyes on where it is that you're trying to go. You know, a basketball player needs to keep their eyes on the rim as their target when they're shooting a basketball. So if we're all looking to improve our lives or to improve performance or to create a better scenario, then that needs to be the direction at which we're looking. And we can't dwell on the negative. And, you know, one of the things that I believe is a huge misconception is people tend to think that positivity is this Pollyanna view that everything's always sunshine and rainbows and that there's no acknowledgement of the bad. And that's simply not what being positive is about, at least for me. I mean, I can recognize, you know, all of the things that are going on in the world, and I can appreciate them and respect them, but I can still choose to look for other silver linings instead of dwelling on those things. It doesn't mean that they're not valid. It doesn't mean that they're not there. It just means that I simply look, you know, for silver linings and for opportunities. And that's what high performers in sports and in business do.
I feel like silver lining is the key word throughout all of what we're going through. It's like, how do we find the positives? Carly, I'm going to come back to something we spoke about before we pressed record, which was you were an essential character on The Office, and I outed myself as a massive Office fan. So my question, though, is we spoke about the episode in which you played basketball, and it wasn't something you were accustomed to doing. How do you stay positive when you're asked to do something that you is totally outside your comfort zone, which a lot of us are experiencing, right? People are going to get jobs they've never thought they had. I'm doing things as a rabbi. I was like, no one trained me in any of this, right?
In YouTube videos on how to be, you know, preach a sermon online, right?
Exactly.
No, it was funny because I actually in my backyard in Colorado growing up, my dad and my brother taught me how to play horse. That was about the extent of my basketball experience. I didn't know how to travel with a ball. I didn't know. I could shoot, but I was a nanny at the time. So basically I was playing with a little 8-year-old boy who could sink a basket from anywhere. And I was playing with him and I'm like, okay, when I auditioned, they asked me if I play basketball and I said, I can play horse.
Right.
And, you know, that was it. And what they really wanted was older looking disheveled people who couldn't really play. So I was actually relieved that that's what they wanted. And then when we got there and I was surrounded by Patrice O'Neill and Craig Robinson and Steve Carell and people who actually, and John Krasinski, these people, and David Denman, who actually played basketball, I was like, oh snap, I'm in trouble. And I went home and I made my husband try to teach me how to dribble. And that was very unsuccessful. But you've gotta do something to at least, you know, it's not a special skill on my resume, that's for sure. And you've got to rise to the occasion no matter what it is. If somebody asks you, can you do this? And you either want the job or don't want the job, you know, you can't say yes to something you don't know how to do. I answered honestly when they asked me in the interview, can you play? And I'm like, I can play horse. If I'm standing still and I'm aiming at the basket and I get a shot, maybe I can do it. I am not Brian Baumgartner. I cannot shoot a basket from anywhere in the building and sink it. You know, I just can't, no matter how hard I try. And that's what they wanted, luckily. So somehow I got the job. I have no idea how, but I was grateful that that's what they wanted from me. You know, so yeah. But I tell my students all the time, if you can't do it 4 varies or better, then don't put it on your resume. You can't, because the industry is expecting you to do something. If you can't do an accent extremely well, very, 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 very well, then don't put it on your resume.
Right.
Just that's rule of thumb.
Yeah. I think, well, that's also part of staying positive, is like knowing your strengths, right?
Yeah.
And playing to them.
And I'm grateful. My voiceover agent, has sent me auditions for a lot of grandmothers lately for voiceover,
Yeah.
So I get a lot of them because it just seems to be something I do. And Jewish bubbies, which is fabulous,
Yeah.
because my Aunt Charlotte was one. She lives in Pound Ridge, so it's great. When they know you for something and they keep asking for you, then fingers crossed. So
Absolutely.
um
Yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead. No,
No,
I was trying to, I wanted to bounce off something Ellen said, and then I completely forgot what he said.
it's okay.
Ugh.
It's being recorded. It's not a big
Okay.
deal. All right, we'll come back to it. How about that? If you think of it,
Yes.
sounds good. All right, perfect. So let's move to this. Let's talk about social media and how it plays a role. So, either one of you can answer. It's open. My feeling is, in general, this is what I say about everyone. Even if someone posts something, if you put it on social media, it has to be positive. So if I post a story congratulating someone on a job, and then someone negative, like, this person has this problem with it, I will delete it. And the people, why would you delete my comment? I said, everything I put on social media is positive, period. I don't think this world needs any more pain or hate. So how do you guys deal with that? Whether it's been critiques of your speech or your performance, or just when you see it, does it bring you down? How do you stay positive in a world in which it's so easy for someone to push a button to say something negative, and it may or may not be true about you?
Carly, you wanna go?
Oh, okay. Well, I have to go back to my students first. They are constantly reminded that political views are a bad idea, especially in this industry. That I support, obviously, what's going on, and I stand behind people's right to speak out. But you have to be extremely careful of what you say and do on social media, because so much of it can affect you as an artist. And it's not to say I can't take a stand. I can say I support, obviously, what's going on, and Black Lives Matter and people's lives matter in general. But to take a political stand and badmouth 45, or do something like that, would be inappropriate. And to comment negatively on someone else's post because they expressed their opinion is also, to me, negative in that. And it reflects back on me. So that's why I stay away from it. And usually it's hard because I try and stay away from negative energy. I just try not to surround myself with it. So anytime it comes near me, I went to the NASA space YouTube channel because I was so excited, something positive. Yay. And then I was thinking of the Apollo 13, Tom Hanks. I'm a huge fan. I go nuts over Apollo 13. I think I've watched it 9,647 times because Ron Howard I'm a huge fan of his as well. And watching it again made me realize how unimportant the media coverage was of them in the shuttle, and not them in the spaceship, and then them transferring and all of the recording efforts that they made in their spaceship. So it was like, hey, I want to give a shout out to these guys. They just showed us their space and how little room there is and how they move around and how they can do a side flip and blah, blah, blah. So I put a thumbs up and wished them, rest well. And then somebody commented on my positive comment was something really rude. So I took down my comment because I didn't want that negative thing on there. And I was like, who is this person and why are they doing that? I don't understand. So I just took down my comment because I didn't want that seen. you know, but I wanted to give a shout out to the astronauts because like, hello, I care, you know, they got like 6 likes on the NASA channel. What's up? You know, I don't know. I just try and stay positive in general, period. End of story. That's, you have to in the, you know, you have to in this whole thing. So, Alan.
Yeah.
I've got no shortage of thoughts on it. And first of all, Carly, anyone that doesn't like Tom Hanks is not somebody I want to associate with.
He's so cool.
I mean, he's like, yeah, he is pretty remarkable in everything he's ever done. Well, a few thoughts to unpack. One, the reason I'm personally on social media, first and foremost, is to learn. So I make sure that I'm following people that are going to fill my bucket. So right there immediately, I discern who I'm following, and I don't follow anyone that puts out negative energy, as you guys have said. I'm on there because I want to share. I believe that there's been some things in my life that I've experienced that I can add value to others, and it's a great platform to share things with other people so I can fill other people's buckets. And I choose to only put out positive stuff. And then lastly, to engage, which is to meet people. You know, there's a good chance I would never have met either one of you if it wasn't for social media or some type of social interaction. So for that, I'm incredibly thankful. So I never forget the 3 reasons that I'm on social. When it comes to what I post, I run everything through a very specific 3-step filter. Number 1, does this need to be said? Number 2, does this need to be said by me? And number 3, does this need to be said by me right now? And if it doesn't answer, you know, unequivocally with yes, 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 then it's not something I post. Most of what I tend to post are things in alignment with what I speak about, so that hopefully it's just content that helps others. But then I do voice my opinion and my beliefs, like the times that we're going through now. But I do so in a positive light. I don't believe in disparaging anyone, especially I do believe there's plenty of people that are easily to disparage in today's day and age, but enough of other people are doing that I don't feel compelled to. But then as far as the comments, you know, I learned a long time ago that if you're going to be a performer of any sort, that you have to be able to depersonalize that feedback. And if I post something and someone puts a negative comment or like that speaks more about them and where they are than it does about me. And I'm always open to feedback. I'm always open to someone giving me some constructive comments to allow me to develop. But if someone just puts something that's hateful or mean, that's more of a reflection of where they are in their emotional state than me. And I have no problem just disregarding it. I'm such a big believer in free speech, and I don't believe in censorship. So for I just leave comments up. In fact, to me, it's basically an advertisement that they're saying something foolish and the rest of the world's going to see it, because I'm certainly not going to condone it. But I choose not to. I don't delete them, but I definitely don't engage. I don't try to talk sense into people on social media, because I've got better uses of my time. So I aim and work really hard to make sure that my involvement, whether incoming or outgoing, is as positive as can be. And I've had to unfollow people that I'm actually friends with because I don't like the stuff that they're putting out there. So yeah, I guard and protect my social real estate very carefully for all of the reasons that you two shared.
So someone once said to me, why do you it was in regards to comments, maybe it wasn't on social media, but why are you trying to use logic to explain emotions? Right? Like some people are just spewing out because they're having a bad day, or they, you know, I don't usually talk about being a rabbi on my podcast, but a lot of people dump their grief here, whether we did something wrong or not. It doesn't matter. We could do exactly what they said they wanted, but like that's what they need. And we have to hold that space for them. And so you don't always take what, I can't use logic to explain their deep, dark emotion whether they lost someone or they're in a fight with someone. And I think we're learning that a lot, is like, it's hard to understand not just the background and life people are living, the day people had, right?
Well, and it's, you know, I think it's important too, to be able to discern what type of feedback is credible and what's not.
Yes.
So if right now, if both of you don't like my Under Armour polo shirt, that's simply your opinion, and you're entitled to it. It doesn't mean that
I love it, by the way.
It doesn't mean that it's a bad shirt. Now, if at the end of this recording, if Carly said, hey, I have a lot of experience in voice work, and Alan, there's something you could do different, maybe to change your voice so that you'd project better. Well, that's feedback that I would welcome, because that's actually something that can advance and move me forward. So you have to know the difference between someone that's giving you competent instruction and someone that's just voicing an opinion. I mean, I certainly want to have a likable characteristic about myself. I don't ever want to walk off stage and people go, I don't like that guy, but I don't do stuff for other people's approval. I do what I believe, and I do what I think will be beneficial to the audiences I serve, but I'm not there to please every single person, because that's impossible. So I think discerning what feedback is valuable and learning how to disregard the rest is incredibly important.
That's great.
Yeah, I have to agree. Approval is something that you can't, I deal with rejection on a daily basis. And if I gave up, I would have quit this business a long time ago. Approval is something that you can't be subject to. You can't give up your power to that, and you can't surrender to it. The days when I come home and I walk in the door and I have this long face, and my husband looks at me and goes, how did it go? And I'm like, I'm a terrible actress. I can't do 2 lines. I can't even get that right. And I crawl in bed and I pull the covers over my head is usually the one I booked.
Right.
Because I just think that the world is coming to an end. And the days that I come out of the audition, I think, man, I nailed that, are the ones that I'm like, nope, not even close, so how do
I
you
was gonna
know?
say, I found a lot. I love that you think that, because I'm very similar. I hear so many no's when I'm trying to get into speaking engagements. But what I've learned to do, which really helps me depersonalize it, is I don't look at it as good and bad or right or wrong. It's just a matter of, they didn't feel I was the right fit for their event, and I'm okay with that, because there's a lid for every pot, and I'm not the right speaker for every single event. My goal is to speak at the events where it's a two-way relationship, where I'm perfect for their audience and their audience is perfect for me, because then I know we're going to make some sweet music. But it's really hard to not take it personal when you're in the types of work that we're in, but to be able to hear a no and still have the resilience to say, okay, this doesn't mean that I'm not good at what I do. It just means that I'm not a good fit for them. And there's nothing wrong with not being a good fit. And to me, the positive side of that is, well, now that you've said that I'm not a good fit for you, now I'm free to go look for someone that is a better fit, and I can't wait to find them. So for every audition that you don't get, I know that there's one you're going to get right around the corner.
Yeah. And being the solution to somebody's problem is always the key to it. I've had casting directors talk to my students, and they tell them, you're coming in and you're hopefully the solution to our problem. And if you are, then great. And if not, then you did a great job, and we will remember you. And that's important for them to remember, for me to remember. And it's starting to pay off a little later than I had hoped it would. But it is starting to pay off, because folks are starting to remember me. And so I'm being called into offices from, 10 years ago, they met me, and they're calling me back, and they're calling me back. And, Warner Brothers has me come in time and time again to audition for a show that they met me 10 years ago, the casting office of this and that. So I'm very grateful. And I think gratitude is important. And I think Alan does this as well. I wake up every morning and I meditate first thing in the morning. I have my coffee and I sit and I find my brain. I have to find my brain because it takes hours to find this brain. But I have my coffee every morning and I sit and meditate first thing in the morning. And then I play the song that means the most to me in the morning after I meditate, which right now is India Ari's I Am Light, which is just the most gorgeous song. And it reminds me that I am, and that I am not the mistakes I made in the past. I'm not anything that I was raised to believe. I am not my skin. I'm not this look. I am just radiant energy dancing through life. And all I have to give and receive is love, and just live by that. So that's what I do first thing in the morning. And then I have to set my alarm to get my tushy up out of the seat when I'm enjoying my coffee, and then, get ready and go do something. So, and staying motivated in COVID is an interesting process because, ooh, it's a lot to take on to stay motivated at home, working from home, as an actor. But it's uh, learn a new monologue, do a scene online, watch a play reading.
Afternoon coffee.
Yeah, have Zoom coffee. Exactly. That's it.
That's the
all you
silver lining to all of COVID-19 has been coffee, I think.
I would like to have coffee with Judy Gold, by the way. Oh my gosh. I watched your interview with her. I'm such a fan.
Yeah. Great.
Oh, she's crazy.
Yeah. She is fun. All she doesn't, it's just an on switch. So last question. So what's maybe the best lesson you learned, or maybe that you have written, you feel like, Alan, maybe it's touched the most amount of people. What's the best piece of advice you've been given or that you've given to others that you think still resonates, that keeps you or others motivated?
All right, well, I'll share two. The best advice that I was given when I was younger is to find what you're naturally pretty good at, find what you love to do, and then find where those two things intersect. And wherever those two things intersect, you've got a pretty high chance of not just being successful, but of actually being happy and enjoying what you do. So find what you're naturally good at, what you love to do, find where they intersect. And for young people, that's at least a starting point. It's okay to be 18 and not know what you want to do with the rest of your life. But what's important about that is that intersection will actually change as you get older, because you'll find new things that you're passionate about, and you'll uncover other talents and things that you're good at that you didn't know. So for most of my career, being a basketball performance coach was that intersection. And now that I'm a little bit older, it's actually keynote speaking. And then the best advice that I have to give others is, I'll speak through the first person now. I'm 44 years old, and I have this vision of who I want to be 20 years from now. So who do I want the 64-year-old Alan to be? Well, without getting into too much detail, I want the 64-year-old Alan to be physically, mentally, and emotionally fit. I want the 64-year-old Alan to have a very deep and strong connection with his children, his loved ones, his family, his closest clients and colleagues. And I want the 64-year-old Alan to be doing what he considers meaningful work in service of other people. So that's kind of loosely who I want to be. And every decision I make in my life right now, I run through a binary filter of, will this take me closer to being that guy, or will it take me further away? And this goes from what I choose to eat for lunch to who I follow on Instagram. Will this take me a little bit closer to being that man that I want to become, or will it take me further away? And then obviously my goal is to make as many good decisions and consistently make decisions that are in alignment with who I want to be. And while I'll be the first to tell you that I realize time is not promised, there's nothing that guarantees I'll even see the age of 64. If I do, I'm very confident that's the man that I'll become, because those are the decisions and habits that I make every single day right now. And by simplifying life, getting clarity on who I want to be, and then running it through that filter for every decision, it makes life so much easier. There's not much friction, because most of the things that people would choose to do that are clearly not in alignment with that, they're not even a question for me anymore. I don't even entertain them, because that's not who I want to be. So that was kind of long-winded, but those are my two pieces of advice.
Making me regret every decision I made yesterday.
Yeah.
Today's a new day for you, Jeremy, and tomorrow's a new day. So you can change your mindset in a moment.
Carly, what about you? Anything that you've learned from your teachers, or advice you give to your students that you sort of really keeps people positive?
Yeah, and this goes back, I remembered what Alan said in terms of finding the silver lining. I think that, oh my gosh, what I learned from my students is that there is humor in everything. I teach improvisation, and somehow I'm had to manage to teach improvisation online. So that was interesting. And what we did this semester was we found characters, and all of my students created an over-exaggeration of YouTube gone wrong. And I have never laughed so hard in my entire life. I mean to tell you, these people came up with the most exaggerated characters, kind of along the lines of the silly people you see in Costco pricing everything. Really? Like, this is making money? And it's just, there is humor in everything. And I am trying desperately to come up with a one-woman show, which is kind of why I need Judy. For there is so much that has happened that is absolutely hysterical in my Carly's crazy COVID. And it, you know, from the things that have arrived from Amazon to, you know, just situations in my life to get this silly booth put together, to there's humor in all of this. There is humor in everything that we're doing. There is humor going on all around you, from the way that your cat is reacting to you to the way your dog is like obsessing on you, and the fact that there are no more doggy puzzles online to be purchased. What is going on with that? To, you know, the drug that you need that you can't get because it's being used for testing, and, you know, the prescription that you had for years is now no longer available, and you wonder why. Because the government has taken it over, you know. So there's humor in everything, and to just stop and breathe and find the funny is, that's, there's humor in everything. There is humor in all of this, and I can't wait to see what the writers in the world are doing with this. I cannot wait to see what comedy comes out of this. I cannot wait for a reply from Judy's comedy class, because I've written to them. I'm waiting. And you know, it's just, that's the silver lining for me, is that there is humor. And that's what I tell my students. I said, there is funny in everything, and you've got to keep going, and you've got to keep writing, and you've got to keep laughing every day. I will have a good life 20 years from now if I have laughed every day, and if I have given other people laughter. And one of the things that my students did that absolutely blew me away was, when they graduated, we watched a virtual graduation online, which I was already verklempt when I had watching them graduate. And then afterwards, the administration sent out an email with a graduation presentation from the conservatory students that did the 2-year program. And at the end of the video, every single one of the students had a little blurb about thanking teachers. And the first 4 students said, one right after the other, some of my favorite teachers were Carly Rothenberg, Carly Rothenberg, Carly Rothenberg. And I was on the floor in a puddle. And my husband comes in, he goes, "What's wrong?" And it's like, my students, and I was like, I really did something good here. You know, I really reached 200 students. I made a difference in their lives. And I did it through humor, because every single one of them said, "Thank you for making me laugh." And I was like, oh my gosh, I did? Wow. Okay. All through improv. Amazing.
Yeah.
There's humor in everything.
Absolutely. I think that's important. Yesterday, during all the protests and stuff, and, you know, it's hard, especially here in Minnesota, to watch a lot of this. And there was someone who walked around dressed as Batman. And I, you know, at first I was like, that's inappropriate. And then I was like, you know, but I did chuckle for a moment in what is so painful for everyone, and so divisive for so many people. And it was, I really appreciated that. I don't know who the person was, and maybe it was in bad taste, but it allowed me to just for a moment escape. I think that's what The Last Dance did, Alan. I'm assuming you watched it, but like, we're just dying for another episode. I know there's no way, like, not with him on the Wizards, of course. So I want to give you both the opportunity to plug anything that you're working on, or that, Alan, maybe start with your book. Where can people find it?
You can go to raiseyourgamebook.com. You can pick it up on Amazon. And while I'm certainly no voice actor, I did do the read for the audio book, so you could get it on audible.com as well. And I tell you what, Carly, that you have no idea how much I respect and appreciate what you do, because that was so challenging for me to do. And all I was doing was reading something that I wrote in my voice, and I still had trouble with it. So I can't imagine reading something someone else wrote in a different voice. So I bow down to you, and what you do is immensely, I mean, you're so talented. It's remarkable.
Oh, thank you. Oh my gosh.
Carly,
Wow.
anything you
I'm gonna
want
buy your book.
to?
I have okay. My team is writing a show, but we don't know where it is. I have producers working on it, and my management team is submitting it, so it's in limbo. I'll be the first person to announce that on social media. And my website is just carlyrothenberg.com. If anybody needs to reach out, I have a contact page on there. And I'm on all the social media thingamajigger bobble doodles. I and I did send an email to Judy Gold's acting comedy one woman show thing. So hopefully I'm serious about it. I am serious. I'm dead serious about it. So I am hoping that works and that I can get that off the ground. But other than that, I'm just plugging along in my booth, in my padded cell, I might add. I have a padded cell.
There you go.
You know? It's
Well,
very cool.
I'm going to get a front row ticket to your one woman show, Carly, whenever it's ready. You just tell me where it'll be. I would love to come check it out.
Thank you. Yay. I would love that.
Ellen, we'll go together. How about that?
That sounds like a plan. That would be phenomenal.
All right. Thank you both for your time and energy. And let's pray for a better world, however we decide to pray or meditate. And thank you both for sharing your voices with me.
Sounds good.
Thanks for having us. It was my pleasure. Yay.